Finish up looking at the slow types of mass wasting. As you may recall, we put mass wasting into two basic categories: rapid activity and slow activity. And in the slow activity, we only have two types: a slow slide, which we call creep, and a slow flow, which we classified as solar fluxion. Creep is found on any and all surfaces, where solar fluxion, remember, is found generally or primarily in permafrost conditions. So what we want to do next is look at the other category of mass wasting, that which leads to significant changes in the landscape over very short periods of time. Minutes, seconds, generally is what happens and the event takes place. But before we get there, I'd like to look at the factors that control the types of mass wasting and the rates of motion. I've alluded to some of this as we've talked about creep and solar fluxion and the activities in the Andes and so on and so forth. Basically, the factors of note, and there's not any arrangement of most important to least important, they're just the factors involved. So all of these play a role at one time or another. Okay, first of all, water added to the soils to the surface of the earth, creates conditions which facilitate mass wasting. Now, most of you have spent some time on the beach as youngsters. Yes, no, maybe? You played with sand buckets and sand pails and you made castles in the sand. And you found out that if the sand was absolutely dry, you could not make any sand castles. The sand would just fall away. A little bit of water added to the sand created a structure that could be molded and shaped into castles. So a little bit of water literally adds adhesion to sand particles. So that little bit of water provides an adhesive of sorts between grains of sand. A lot of water will destroy that adhesion. So a little bit of water is good. A lot of water isn't beneficial. Water also adds a phenomenal amount of mass. When we add a lot of mass to any landscape, we destabilize that landscape. And this is referred to as overloading. So as soon as we begin to add water to the surface materials, if it destabilizes those surface materials, it's a process of overloading. Water also creates a surface that is slippery or slick. So water lubricates. We all know that wet grass and wet soils are slipperier than dry grass, dry soil. So water will lubricate surfaces. And finally, water will dissolve cements within various types of rock units. And when I say cement, I don't mean concrete. Cements are those things that hold particles together. So water plays a significant role in many different forms. It overloads, it lubricates, it destroys adhesion between particles, and it dissolves substances. So water is a factor. The more water we have, the greater the likelihood of mass wasting. Obviously, the steeper the slope, if all other factors are held constant, the greater the amount of mass wasting. This is obvious. That we end up with more material sliding on steeper slopes than we do on flat ground. So basically, slope is a factor here as well. Not as significant, well, it's significant, but there's not much more to say about it. Surface materials. Obviously, rocks are more stable. Look at Rib Hill. Rib Hill has not moved significantly or been eroded or undergone any significant mass wasting. Rocks generally will resist mass wasting to a greater degree. The rock units that are most inclined to undergo mass wasting are sedimentary rocks. So the rocks that are most inclined to undergo mass wasting are sedimentary rocks. And the reason for that is sedimentary rocks are deposited in layers. These layers are referred to as beds. Within each bed, the sedimentary units are pretty well tied together. They're interlocked, they're cemented, they're tied together relatively well. However, between the beds, and this is called the bedding plane, the rock units are not cemented together very well. All you're doing there is stacking one on top of the other. Whereas within the beds, the rock units are intertwined, interconnected. But the bedding planes, all you're doing is stacking one particular type of material on top of another. It doesn't fuse together. It doesn't meld together at all. And so it's a zone of weakness. If the sedimentary rocks are like this, obviously they're not going anywhere. But if we began to tilt the sedimentary rocks like that, obviously we have destabilized them. And there's a possibility that they would slide over time. And we'll discuss such an event in a couple of minutes. So rocks generally are pretty stable unless you have sedimentary rocks. And if the sedimentary rocks have been displaced from the horizontal to something less than a horizontal. Regolith or sediment, soils, and that debris laying on top of bedrock generally is prone to movement. So the materials. Vibrations within the earth. Generally, the most notable are those created by earthquakes. Seismic waves are the triggering agent for a number of mass wasting events. Mass wasting event in the Andes of Peru was triggered by an earthquake. So most major mass wasting events are set off by some type of triggering agent. Other triggering agents are, as we mentioned before, autos, or just traffic of various types on the roadway. Anything that causes vibrations. And lastly, and probably the least important of the group, would be plant material. Plant material has very low bearing if we're dealing with bedrock. It does hold regolith and sediment in place to a degree. So if we were to look at these five, literally the first four are critical. The last one, plant material, of lesser importance. It is a factor though. Okay, we've looked at the slow, let's look at the rapid. Remember, we had slides, flows, falls, subsidence, and a composite. So these are the various types. In the slide category, your authors basically divided it into two subcategories. Both authors do this: rock slides versus what he calls debris slides. Debris slides are unconsolidated material, regolith, sand, soils, sediments of various types. Both of these will exhibit rapid motion, but the rock slides exhibit extremely rapid motion, several miles per hour.